The thing you should detect at the end of this is not all of the text in the middle. It's that at the end of the day, what's being said doesn't add up, right? If you believed the data was all that ambiguous, you'd still give a safe drug because you don't have an alternative.
Absolutely.
We're literally sending people home without treatment where they go and sicken the people that they live with when there's a perfectly safe drug.
It's worse than that.
We're
sending them home, and we're saying, "Don't come back until your lips are blue."
Until you're sick.
Right.
It's not sick. Okay, it's hypoxic.
Mm-hmm.
It's that your blood oxygen is sick is I've got a headache, I've got a fever, and sorry,
my sick is different than your sick.
But this is turning the dial up on sick.
Yeah.
This is pretty severe sick.
They had a very safe
because they very well might not recover.
You have to get oxygen now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Lips are blue equals oxygen saturation of high 80s. Okay. That's way sick.
Yep.
So,
okay. And our policy is, despite all the data that you've and others have championed, you have personally funded, which I acknowledge that commitment. I think that's super important for the audience to understand, is for you, this isn't just talk. You walk the walk. You took your wallet and you said fluvoxamine study at WashU, one of the top universities in the United States. You funded it. So when you talk about the fluvoxamine study, it's not just that you pulled something out of the air. You enabled it. You provided leadership. Okay, so all those data are out there. And yet, the current public policy is, if you come into my hospital and you've got all the signs and symptoms and you got a PCR diagnosis and you feel sick enough with COVID that you feel like you got to go to the ER, and the ER tells you, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, we're not going to take you in because your blood oxygen saturation levels are not at critical levels and you need to go home and just incubate."
Right.
Right. But without giving you a drug that would almost certainly make you better, and without giving it to your family so you don't sicken them. We are actually behaving in a way that propagates the pandemic.
Right. So let me tell you.
I think we can all agree that the behavior is bizarre.
Yes,
especially when we know, like George Fareed and Brian Tyson, they have a little practice. They've treated 6,500 patients. Average age is 60 years old. They have like 0 hospitalizations. They say we only get a hospitalization when someone comes up to us like really late. But anyone who gets to us early, they don't go to the hospital at all. We turn them around with our treatment protocol. So the most important thing is to treat people early with these drugs. And so it almost doesn't matter.
Their treatment protocol is
it has hydroxychloroquine, it has ivermectin, it has fluvoxamine in it. And the point is that they use the drugs that are shown to have an effect size, and combined, they have an enormous effect. And everyone will have their own set of drugs. David Seftel just used fluvoxamine. He got 100% track record. Other people use ivermectin and fluvoxamine. I know a lot of docs who started with ivermectin. They added fluvoxamine. They say, "Oh my gosh, this is even better than what I had before."
Right.
So it's all about this combination of drugs. And of course, we don't tell people about George Fareed and Brian Tyson. They don't even exist because those are anecdotes.
Right.
Now, we ignore the frontline physicians who are having success. So we don't go and find out, why isn't the NIH saying, "Hey, this guy has 100% track record"?
He just said something that's super important.
Okay. Oh, finally.
No, you said a lot of things that are super important, but I want to highlight that one. You emphasize frontline physicians. And this has been my observation. It's like dealing with this community intensively since January of 2020.
They only trust these double-blind randomized controlled trials that take a year to do. It's crazy.
And typically require 20 million or more to do.
Well, yeah.
Okay. So
or $1 billion in the case of what Merck is asking for.
Can I get the little yellow card?
You want?
I ask for the floor.
All right.
No, the yellow card is
I would just want to make a point to amplify on the good message that you just gave. Okay. And it's a good news story. We need a little bit of good news here. There's a lot of lot of kind of creepy stuff.
We're going to end with great news. But
Okay.
anyway, we could use some good news along the way.
Here in the States and across the world, we've had primary care physicians, frontline docs, ICU docs, desperately seeking solutions. And they have resorted, because they have the right to do so as physicians, to prescribe things off label. And I can tell you, these docs that I deal with all the time are spending enormous amounts of time in the literature, reading the preprints, trying to figure out some solution to save their patients' lives in the face of this amazing gap of clarity from our centralized public health service. And I just kind of wanted to take a moment and pick at what you just said. The innovation, this is amazingly paradoxical. What I've seen is all of the innovation in treating this disease is coming from these frontline docs that are tinkering and innovating. And what this gets to is the fundamentals of, and I'm going to say it, what makes this country great. Okay. And it's historically not been large, centrally controlled enterprises. It's been individual initiative. And one of the good news stories in COVID is that a lot of the success have come from the docs like you're dealing with, innovating, tinkering, experimenting, trying things, and they're driven by the need to give their patients some option. And I just wanted to amplify that. Thanks for letting me have
hold on.
Let me give the counterpoint to that when you give it to me. Okay.
So the docs on the ground are in a position to see this. They are in a good position, at least with respect to ivermectin, because it's so safe, right? If you don't believe it's any good, but it might be, you can give it to a few patients. And if you see a signal, then you can give it to more patients.
If you can get it.
If you can get it.
Which you can't get it in Canada.
The pushback is incredible. Right.
It is
the
insane.
stigmatization of doctors, the punishment of doctors is, but you make a really good point in your document, right? Which is that doctors who have a number of patients below a certain threshold
never see anything bad.
What they see are anecdotes, right? And so you need a practice of a certain size before you see anything you're going to regard as a signal.
600 or more, 900.
That wouldn't matter so much if the doctors were in a position to encounter each other online and say, I had the weirdest thing
and they won't
happen.
talk about it.
And the point is the stigma for talking about it in public. I can't tell you. This is driving me crazy.
The paramedics won't talk about it. They see all the
professionals in all of the related disciplines. The number of people who will say to you, well, actually, here's what I'm seeing, but I'd really rather not because
I
what
get
happens
fired.
if I do?
I get fired.
Right. And the point is, that's a signal in and of itself, right? That is a signal that
I concur.
That's wrong.
Phenomenon does not want this discussed. And frankly, again, if you imagine that what we've got now, at the very least, right, we've got an excellent prophylactic that is extremely safe. We've got an excellent treatment that is extremely safe. Those are both ivermectin, right? Then we've got fluvoxamine. Fluvoxamine, which crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it gets to some place
the
that I didn't know
brain fog and all that,
right.
And long-haul COVID.
Right. These things, that's a pretty good kit to deal with this pandemic. It's a good kit for ending this pandemic.
Right.
And what we have is, I can't swear that it's related, but it's certainly conspicuous. It's the only hypothesis I can think of that we have financial interests of, private corporations that involve these excellent treatments not being available in order to try experimental stuff that's not out of patent. Right. But I wanted to point out something cryptic that's hanging out here. Right. You said it's going to cost $20,000 to do a randomized. Oh, $20 million. Sorry. What did I say? 20 million. That's not a small amount of money. So when somebody online, whoever they are, however well-intentioned they are, whatever degree they may have, when they say, really, the only thing that's going to convince me that I should risk my patient's life with ivermectin, which is, of course, an insane assertion that there's any risk at all, really.
So long as you keep the dose within the safe range.
Within the range that we know to be safe, right? Of course, there's some risk, but...
Like all drugs.
Right. The problem is...
But with ivermectin, the risk profile is extremely well known. It's been out there for decades.
40 years, 4 billion doses already delivered.
Just so.
Right. So here's the point. When you, as a warrior on Twitter, start battling for, hey, I'm a science person. I want to see the randomized controlled trial before I give patients any risk at all for ivermectin. What you're effectively doing is you are a warrior on behalf of new and less well-known drugs that are still under patent and against drugs that are old and out of patent, because who's going to pony up the $20 million
for something they can't make a profit
for something
on.
they can't make a profit
So I
on
lived-
and that would
I
block
lived-
their EUA?
I live this, okay? I set up a company, Etheric Pharmaceuticals, for Zika, and I worked closely with the DoD and developed a portfolio of drugs, repurposed drugs, many of which are now being applied to COVID because they're antivirals, okay? I went bankrupt. The investment community had zero interest because there's no way to make a buck, okay? And pharma would not partner because there's no way to make a buck.
And you can't.
So that I have direct personal experience validating the thesis that the financial incentives around drug repurposing are such that it doesn't get done.